So a big story dropped last week about Justice Democrats that I wanted to share with you and give you guys my take on it. So Huffington Post has this long article by Daniel Marins, who, by the way, does a phenomenal job with his reporting. I feel like this was very detailed. And the title here is, "A Progressive Powerhouse's Surprise Layoffs Fuel Concerns About the Left's Future. Justice Democrats played a critical role in electing the squad. Now it will have to do more with less." Okay. So they actually bring me up in this piece and, some of my criticisms against Justice Democrats. And like I said, very long article, very detailed. Do yourself a favor and go read the entire thing. But I'll sum it up for you here, and then I'll give you guys my take on it. So basically, what they say is this. Justice Democrats, and you guys know the backstory. I'll give you a quick backstory just so, you remember all the details here. But in the wake of the 2016 election, Hillary Clinton, of course, lost to Donald Trump. And I was just disgusted and furious that a guy like Donald Trump could get anywhere near the White House. And I viewed that as a colossal failing of the Democratic Party to not be able to beat the most beatable opponent in history because you're just coming across as that disconnected from average people. And so, I got together with Cenk Uygur and Shoykat Chakrabarti and Corbin Trent and some others, and we decided we need to change the course of the Democratic Party and try to make it so we get representatives who stand for something, who will fight for the American people, and make it so that the Republicans are an afterthought and they lose all the time because we are representing the people so well. And, for me, a big inspiration about it was FDR. When you go back and read the history of FDR's time in office, it's astonishing. It's something we've never seen in the modern era. It's somebody won the presidential election 4 times. This is before there were term limits. In fact, the Republicans looked at that and said, we need to do term limits because we'll never be able to beat these guys because they're too good. So he won the presidential election 4 times. And he also, at one point, held 80% of the House and 80% of the Senate. So just crushing majorities. Why? Because he delivered with the New Deal. And people said, oh, you help me, I will vote for you. And so we decided we need to fight back against the corporate Democrats and make the Democratic Party uncorrupted. And so the original working name for Justice Democrats was actually the Left Tea Party. And then after that, there was some disagreement around that one. And, because it sounds like you're being more right-wing than left-wing. So there's arguments on both sides. I understand that. But the whole idea was, let's have a Democratic faction which fights like the Tea Party fights Republican leadership. We want Democrats to fight Democratic leadership to go in a more progressive direction and represent the American people. And then, so the second name, I believe we were toying with New Deal Democrats. Again, that's the ode to FDR. Then I think eventually we went to Justice Party Democrats, and then we settled on Justice Democrats. So anyway, we started the group. I was on the board, as was Cenk. We never took a penny for doing any of this because we just wanted to do the right thing for the country. This wasn't about us personally. And we were involved in every single board meeting. I wrote the platform for it. You had Shoykat and Corbin brought in all these candidates, and we punched way above our weight for the amount of money we were able to raise. But at the time, it was all small dollar donations. It was you guys donating, and we punched way above our weight. We got AOC to get rid of Joe Crowley. There's a number of Justice Democrats who are there now, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, the list goes on and on. You guys know the deal. So here we are today, and what they say in this article is they're laying off 9 of their 20 staffers. Donations have dried up for Justice Democrats. Now, Marins also goes on to point out, well, it also dried up for Planned Parenthood, the Sierra Club. This is sort of across the board. There are donations drying up. The Sunrise Movement, of course, also laid off 35 of their 100 staffers. They point out in the piece 62% of Justice Dems donations are small dollar donations. And the head of Justice Democrats, Alexandra Rojas, she takes very little pay compared to other people who are in a similar position and running a political group like this. She gets paid $81,000 a year. And they just couldn't dot the I's and cross the T's and pay the bills. And so they were effectively sort of forced to lay off 9 of their 20 members. He also goes on to say, there's now dark money groups that are affiliated with the establishment Democrats who are spending big to beat JD candidates. We saw this with AIPAC and AIPAC-related groups and other groups who are anything to defeat people who are even mildly more progressive than the establishment Democrats. And this cycle now, Justice Democrats is saying, we're only going to defend our incumbents. We're not going to support, upstarts in primaries to take out very conservative Democrats. And that's where we are now. So they're trying to defend Jamal Bowman. Again, they have 0 people who are primarying conservative Democrats at this point in time. And they're just sort of slowly but surely going away or having less and less of an impact. So I want to give you some more what they say in here. They say there are no big donors on the left like there are on the right. And that's part of the problem is that, when small donors aren't giving and you don't have any larger donors, then what do you do? And so they go on to say, quote, a senior House progressive aide conceded that Justice Democrats' aligned incumbents lacked cohesiveness and did not have regular group meetings with Justice Democrats. Though how much of that was due to the operation's limited funding is unclear. Other than some Israel bills, we never talked about legislation, the senior aide said. There's a perspective that people with JD win their race and come to Congress and do their own thing. Okay, so what went wrong here and what should they do? I mean, look, to me, the biggest thing is this. They lost their identity, right? And as a co-founder of the group, I can tell you, the whole idea was you're outsiders, you're uncorrupted, you don't take corporate PAC money, you don't take billionaire money, you raise through small dollar donations, and you guys are crusaders to end the corruption, to get a higher minimum wage, to get universal health care, to get strong unions, to fight on left policy and represent the American people. And you're supposed to be that Tea Party of the Democratic side and take on Democratic leadership who's complacent and super neoliberal. People like Nancy Pelosi, for example, who raise a tremendous amount of money from big donors and corporations, and then you could see it's reflected in the policies that they push. They always want to split the difference and, help out their corporate donors while mildly tweaking things and moving in an okay direction for the average person. We wanted to put an end to that because we feel like it's that weakness that helped bring us Trump. And so from my perspective, look, I think they lost their identity and I think they lost their mission, and they don't know if they're outsiders or just a regular Democratic group. And at this point, they look a hell of a lot more like a regular Democratic group. And that explains why a lot of small dollar donations have dried up. And so there's a laundry list of things we can get into that you can partly blame for the downfall of the group. But I think the core of it is what I just described. And I can speak to this in a pretty authoritative position because I was a co-founder of the group. I know what the mission was. But apparently, under the leadership now, and Cenk and I haven't been affiliated with the group for a very long time, but under the leadership now, I don't think they have that same mission. I don't think their goal is, we're going to be incredibly organized, we're going to be incredibly cohesive, we're going to work together, we're going to strategize, and we're going to push Democratic leadership, and we're going to make a lot of noise, and we're going to drag the conversation towards, we're not bending on something like increasing the minimum wage. This is like an 80% issue in the country, and we're going to make a lot of noise, and we're going to fight on it, we're going to draw a red line, and we're going to use our political capital. And I mean, I think that's the problem. And I think if people saw a fight from Justice Democrats, if people saw a group that was working together in a cohesive sense, then I think they would donate more. I mean, so we're seeing a little glimpse of this recently. Bernie's holding up Biden appointments, and he's telling Biden, you better lower the cost of prescription drugs. Because Biden has the authority to do that on his own. He's saying, you better lower the cost of prescription drugs, or I'm just going to keep blocking this person. Okay, what if, instead of just Bernie, what if it was a group of 18 Democrats in the House? And especially back when you had a Democratic majority, you absolutely could throw your weight around and try to impact change. And then all the pressure gets flipped on, in the Senate, the mansions and the cinemas and the conservative Democrats in the House. If Biden has to go to them and say, look, man, maybe I agree with you on not raising the minimum wage, but we got these people. We're not going to get anything passed unless we raise minimum wage. So you guys better help me on this. We got to raise the minimum wage, or this group's not going to go away. They're going to tank my whole agenda. All of us aren't going to get reelected if we don't take these demands seriously. And so I think that's where we are. If you had 18 House Democrats who were doing the same thing Bernie's doing, where they're like, forget just one appointment. We're going to block all Biden's appointments unless He lowers prescription drug prices, which he can do through executive order. All prescription drug prices that the U.S. government funds, which is most of them, he can lower through the Bayh-Dole Act. Okay, force him to do that. Now, look, and this gets to the problem, right? It's like, we didn't vet for leadership qualities with the candidates that we got. It was just like, do you agree with these policies? Yes, okay, you're in, and then, you train them, etc. But like, leadership and vision is probably the most important thing, along with the policies. And so I think in their mind, they're afraid, well, if we stand up to Biden and Pelosi and now Hakeem Jeffries and we fight, we're going to get maligned in the media, which is probably true. But then they're going to compare us to Manchin and Sinema and say, well, actually, they're with Republicans, which is not at all true because you're fighting for left-wing things, right? And so I think they're afraid. I think they don't want to be the source of the ire of the mainstream media and Democratic leadership. I think that once they got into Washington, they got Washington brain and got co-opted into thinking if you go along to get along, if you do a tit for tat with leadership, then eventually you'll get the policies you want and you'll end up being taken more seriously and you'll win your next election, all that stuff. And I think that's effectively what happened here. And then there's other smaller points, like you have the rise of this super extreme right wing. And so people on the Democratic side kind of feel like, well, any Democrat will do. And so that sort of takes the wind out of the sails of the strong progressives, because there's just this, default malaise where it's like any Democrat will do because these Republicans are so insane that I don't care who the Democrat is. And then there's also that Biden has been a more progressive president than he was as a senator. That's not debatable. So a lot of these people think, well, I got more out of Biden than I ever thought I'd get anyway. So I'm not really going to go to the mat over certain things like $15 minimum wage, even though that should be something you go to the mat for. And so here we are. So look, are they going to go away? I don't know. That might be too strong of a statement. They could be retooling, regrouping, but the fact that they're only focused on defending their incumbents at this point, that does tell me they lost the original mission. The fact that they're not having regular meetings, they're not organizing and strategizing, that tells me that they lost their original mission. And by the way, when they did organize, like on some Israel stuff, like the senior House progressive aide pointed out, what happened? It was the best they've ever been. It was, what was it? Like 9 votes or something against that bill that was like, Israel is not racist and not an apartheid state. Like that was the whole point of the resolution. And they were organized and they were like, yes, it is. And we're voting this down. And yeah, like it'll piss the media off. It'll piss off Democratic leadership, but who cares? You're right. And then that's what excites the base. And that's what gets more donations going. And then, you build out by leading through principle. And it sucks. It's just disheartening because this is the way. This is the only way, the only feasible way to get change in America is to have a left-wing bloc which acts like the Tea Party acts on the right, is aggressive, is intelligent, is organized, is structured, has regular meetings, comes up with good plans, enforces those plans, knows where to draw the red lines, knows how to work with people and when not to work with people and when to use the court of public opinion, because all of Justice Democrats' power came from, we're outsiders, we're using the bully pulpit, we got this legion of small donors, they are going to go to the mat for us because we go to the mat for them. And then all of that trust has been severed and broken. And that's not to say, I don't want to be one of the doomers and the nihilists who pretend like, well, actually, Justice Democrats are as bad as Republicans or as bad as corporate Democrats. That's not true. If you actually look at their voting record, they vote in alignment with my values and your values a much higher percentage of the time than any corporate Democrat does, and certainly than any Republican does. But again, the problem is there is no leadership. There is no strategizing. There is no putting their neck out there. There is no like grand vision or plan here. It's just like, what if we got Democrats who were 5% more progressive than establishment Democrats and they were super cuckish? Like that's what the group has become. And it's a shame. It really is. Because, as somebody who's a co-founder of it, I don't want to see something that I view as, my baby effectively. I don't want to see something like this go away or become less and less powerful. But this is the inevitable conclusion of poor decision-making along the way. So is there a way to revive it? Is there a way to make it better? Is there a way to stick true to that original mission? Yes. Are they going to do it? I would doubt it. because they've been whipped into shape and beaten into line time and time again, not just by Democratic leadership, but also by these huge, big money conservative Democrat groups that are like, if you do one thing we don't like, we'll end you. And that's where this colossal spending comes against these Justice Democrat incumbents. They're trying to get rid of them because they stepped out of line a little bit. The only way to fight back against that is to build trust with a huge small dollar donor base, be organized, be strategic, and fight back in a way that has balls and brains. And I just don't see any of that at the moment. I wish it was the case. I just don't see any of it at the moment. And so, yeah, people can listen to this and dismiss everything I'm saying or whatever, but again, I just want to reiterate, I was one of the co-founders of the group. I know what the purpose was. I know how they deviated from the original purpose. And I wish them the best. I hope they get back to that original mission because that'll make them viable again, but I'm not going to hold my breath for it because the trajectory has not been good. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.